we're talking about Jung Sang-bin here, and what made me what I find really interesting. You told me that at 16 years old, he kept telling you that he's going to go to the Premier League. I talked to him 2 weeks ago. He said the same thing. He said, ultimately, I'm going to the Premier League. This is a player who scored 1 goal this season in MLS, and I mean this in a good way. I'm not trying to make fun of him because he's had some bad injuries, but this is a player who scored 1 goal in MLS this season, and he still believes that he's going to end up in the Premier League one day. So I find that to be very, very interesting. And what I told him when I was having a conversation with him was that I see 2 players in Korea who are as explosive as you and Heung-min Son. Just I'm not trying to compare these guys, but I'm just saying in terms of style. And and like what you just told me kind of makes me wonder. Son Heung-min is a player who's played abroad since he was about 14, 15 years old. And I kind of feel like he's an explosive player as well. Maybe he falls into that same category that you mentioned, maybe slightly different. But do you kind of feel like if he was developed in Korea throughout his younger days as well, would he have been I'm not, obviously, with Germany, England, it's a different culture and a different system there. But would injuries have been a bigger issue for him possibly if he was actually training in Korea? What's your opinion on that?
This is my opinion, right? Because if you see Son Heung-min in person, because there is also, Son Heung-min's leg is very thin, and the muscle, because the Sang-bin muscle looks really tight.
Yeah.
I'm not the expert about the area.
Sure.
Many athletic trainer and physiotherapists, when they touch their muscles and massage, they can feel the quality of a muscle. Yeah. But Sang-bin's muscle, when he was also youth player in Suwon Samsung, was easily tired and easily tight. Yeah, because his muscle is really explosive and very, how can I say, very thick and tight. Yeah. And also, he also had a lot of individualization by himself. Yeah. But also Son Heung-min also did like that.
Right.
But I'm not sure, but when I saw Son Heung-min in front, his muscle it looks very, how can I say, flexible,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very thin and
definitely a different physical figure compared to Sang-bin for sure.
Yeah. Anthrometric maybe. Body composition.
Yeah. We're getting too medical here, and but just to add another question. After 3 years as a fitness coach at Suwon, for the under-18 side, you then became an assistant coach at their under-15 team.
Yeah.
Would it be safe to say that you've kind of transitioned from a fitness coach to more of a general football coach? And even though you were coaching younger players, did you feel that you were once you had this transition, did you feel that you were more involved in the football aspect of things as an assistant coach?
Yeah. The problem of a football fitness coach is they can't improve football fitness. Why? Because football fitness is fitness in the context of football.
Sure.
So football player improve their fitness in the football context. But football fitness can't apply football training by themselves.
Right.
Because football coach always do football training. Normally, football fitness coach just to do warm up and strength training, and sometimes some exercises with speed running or something like that. In Korea, normally, maybe in Spain, maybe in England, maybe some coaches maybe design in other way, but normally in Korea there is some limitation.
Yeah.
Even the football fitness coach in the world can't guide the thinking process of a football player, because thinking is the first priority, if you want to improve fitness. So that's why I decided to be a football coach to guide the players in general way.
Right.
Yeah.
And, maybe going slightly off topic here, but one question that I really wanted to ask you was a team that you briefly coached at in 2022. I guess this was just last year. TNTFC.
Yep.
I get a lot of questions about this team, but only reason I can't provide answers to people who ask me about this one is because I don't know enough. Because I feel like a lot of people are fascinated by what they hear about this team as well. So, just to give our viewers and listeners a brief introduction of what TNTFC is about, it's an independent football club in Korea that's, primarily designed to help former professional players who may have, lost their places at their clubs and are currently unemployed, but ones that are looking to revive their careers, they join TNTFC and they sort of revive their careers. There have been many cases of former professional players who went through TNTFC and then they returned to professional football again. You went from coaching youth players at professional clubs who probably dream of becoming professional footballers one day, to coaching at an independent team with ex-professional players who are eager to return to professional again. What was that? What was that experience like for you as a coach, and what was that work setting like?
Yeah, in TNT there are both types of players, and the specialty in the team is their independent club.
Yeah.
So many players who couldn't find the team in the season go to the TNT FC independent club, and then they have a session regularly to have a contact next time with a normal team. And I went to TNT FC to again apply my knowledge without any compromise, because I decided to be a football coach. And in youth level, I did in Suwon, but I want to football coach in a professional level. So TNT FC was a really good choice for me.
And you're a coach. You're probably the first guest that we've had on this show who've had his entire professional background in Korea, because we've spoken to Lewis Kang, who was Korean as well, but he was more of a football analyst who actually does a lot of his work abroad, away from Korea. But this is why I find our conversation to be really interesting. But you're also someone who travels around a lot too. You've studied in England, or you studied in the UK from what I know. And what I wanted to ask you was, I know that you recently came back from Japan as well. What are some things as you were traveling around that you've learned in other parts of the world, football from other parts of the world, that may be lacking in Korea, or that you thought was new as you were traveling around the world, as you were, studying or learning? What were some things that some discoveries that you've made as you were, traveling around the world as a football person?
Yep. First of all, there are two reasons why I went to Japan. Because the first one is I want to meet Peter Klamovsky, who is the head coach of FC Tokyo. Because when I was a video analyst of Korean national team 15 years ago, maybe 13 years ago, he was also video analyst under 19 of Australia team. But 1 month ago, I just sent a message to Peter, but I didn't know he is now the manager of FC Tokyo. Just I thought maybe he is a coach of under 19 Australia team. But he said, I'm now manager of FC Tokyo. And actually, he was assistant coach of NG Posteskoglou for the last 20 years. And I didn't know that. We just had a conversation sometimes regularly in Facebook. And he said to me that if you want to visit Japan, come to me. So that's why I went to Japan. And Peter also have a similar pathway of coaching journey like me. He was a video analyst, football fitness coach, and assistant coach of FC Yokohama with Posteskoglou. And then he became the manager of J League team 2 years ago. when NG, Postesco Blue went to Celtic.
Right.
So that's why I went to Japan. And also, as you know, Japanese football improves a lot for
Right.
the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And because the system and because of the coach's attitude are amazing. They try to learn every day. And personally, I also go to Europe once a year to meet Raymond de Verheyen because he's now coaching lecturer, and also he's a philosopher of football.
Right.
Because he developed football theory from the Dutch pathway. Because you know the Rinus Michel. After success of Rinus Michel, Dutch FA decided to theorize football. So many the coach of Dutch FA theorized the football in a philosophical way. And Raymond de Verheyen is one of the how can I say, the coach who developed the theory further in this generation. And in the course led by Raymond de Verheyen, I met many coaches who are working in European football. So I met there the ex-Chelsea manager. His name is the British guy. I met
British guy. Graham Potter.
Graham Potter. I met him there, and then Emma Hayes. He also the Chelsea
woman. Yeah.
And also Rune Marik. He was also the assistant coach of Leeds United, and many coaches there. And their quality is really higher level.
Right.
So it gives me a lot of inspiration and a lot of ideas to be a better coach. So that's why I go to Europe regularly.
And about 5 months ago, I guess you're no longer there now, but about 5 months ago, you started a new job as a second team coach. You described yourself as at Suwon. What does that role entail? How was that any different from the previous roles that you've had? And I mean, we did talk a little bit about that, the whole experience, what it did for your career, but like, what was that role like as a second team coach? What was that like?
In Suwon, there is no independent second team. So there is the first team in Suwon, and there is a youth teams. And in first team, there is like a team to over preparing for the next game. And some 10 or 15 players, they don't play the next game. So I train them because they need to prepare every week. Even they can't play the next game. So I train them, and then I also prepare for the next match in terms of analyzing the opponent and preparing for our tactics. So as Young-won said, big pressure about the result.
Right.
And also I went to the club, during the season. So as a coach, I tried to persuade with the staff and coaches, and also sometimes I should listen carefully because the staff working before, they had more experience in this season. So this kind of communication skills also was really important. So because, to be honest, as a coach, many people think that tactics, some coaching skills are the most important ability. But I think that communication skills with the other staff is the most important skill.
Yeah. And we talked about Young-hoon here, and I wanted to ask him this. Young-hoon also has a very similar but different background compared to JP. I kind of feel like he's obviously somebody who grew up in Korea as well. Spent a lot of time abroad too. Especially like in terms of football. I think he learned his football a lot of his coaching philosophy comes from Spain. And Young-hoon, having listened to this conversation, I also wanted to ask you, when you were abroad learning, discovering different things about football, how does your experience compare to JP here? Like, what were some of the things? Like, what are your feelings, or what are your opinions, rather, about some of the things that JP said based on your experience, having spent time in Europe, for your coaching career in football?
I think the basic thing is same, because football is still football. In Korea, football is football. Portugal is football. Spain is football. England is also football. Is football. But the different thing is, maybe I met different people, so I got different ideas from them. Now many people want me to explain about model of game, how can they build the model of game, how they have to apply the methodology of the trainings. But when they ask that kind of things, I always say first thing is the idea. What is your idea, and why is your idea of football? Because without idea, you cannot build a model of game, or you cannot have maybe you can have a methodology of the training, but you have to apply the proper methodology, because each one has their own idea, because so you have to have your own idea. So maybe now you ask me, and someone asked me what was the learning process from those people in Europe. I'd like to say I got many ideas from each one, because in previous episode we had Gonzalo, we had Kino, because I worked with them. Maybe in Korea we had a difficult timetable. Sometimes in a day we had 3 or 4 sessions on the 12, on the 10, on the 15, on the 18. That was hard, but because of that, I learned many things in short time. During that time, of course, I learned a lot of things, but maybe I could see which was their idea about football, which was the starting point of the football for them, for Gonzalo, for Kino, for many other Spanish coaches. So that's the way I define my experience in Europe and my discoveries in Europe.
Yeah, and as someone who's walked a very similar path, I guess, as JP, do you have any questions for him? Having after having this interview, what questions do you have for him?
Actually, it's for my personal interest.
Yeah, go ahead.
JP was in Suwon lately, last 5 months. So I'd like to ask you. There's a player I have many interest in him. So his name is Yoo Jae-ho, number 88. I already had a conversation about him with Ju Seung-ji. He one of his colleagues. So, but I'd like to ask him, how do you define him? What was the footballistically? How was he, and how do you define him?
Good and difficult question, because I have not many data, because he didn't play enough time.
Yeah.
But his football ability as a central midfielder, he can protect the ball, and also because rather than he progress the ball with the dribbling, he can protect the ball, and then he can, how can I say, he can find the other opportunity. It's difficult, but he was a good ball possession skill. So maybe he can play in more compact area rather than open area, because his best skill is protecting the ball rather than progressing the ball by long passing and short passing. So, in my opinion, maybe Yu Jae-ho could have been better if he played in more front, more how can I say, more
maybe
attacking
between
area.
lines.
Yeah, between lines. But in the Suwon period, we had no time for this kind of discussion, because Yu Jae-ho also is like an all-rounder player. So he was also our option to maybe substitute for all kind of central midfielder option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on context of the match, maybe you can put him as a fullback, you can put him as a side midfielder or central midfielder. But yeah, he can afford this. So
yeah, and also the problem is he's young. So in Korea, as you know, there is under 22, 20 under 22 rule, right?
Yeah.
But Jae-ho is not the player in the under 22 category, but he's young.
Yeah.
So for coaches, young players is always good option to sacrifice, you know?
Yeah.
But this is true, because this is also important for managing the player.
Yeah.
Yeah, because old and experienced player is normally special. They always want to play in a special way. So it was difficult.
Yeah. I asked you about him because I watched him just, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 matches and not 90 minutes. He played as a starting 11, but I think he went out because of the injury. If I don't make any mistake, he went out because of the injury. But I saw him as a Korean European midfielder, because when he received the ball, the body position and how he can turn, how he can control the game, and most special thing for me was the how he acts in transition, because in Korea, it's not about what is the good thing or what is the bad thing, but in Korea maybe we still have that football depending on transitions. When you get the ball back from the opposition, many team wants to counterattack. But there's some moment you cannot counterattack, or maybe you can counterattack, but there's many possibility to lose the ball again. So in that circumstance, you need that midfielder. Now these days, many people about the words that use Guardiola, pausa, the pause. You have to pause the game. You have to control the rhythm of the game. Just like you said, he has that ability in smaller spaces. So that was the pretty interesting thing for me. So that's the reason why I asked you about him.
Yeah. And also the other point is in K-League, there is no striker like Mandzukic.
Yeah.
Because in K-League, there are many strikers is opportunist.
Yeah.
But in modern football, the striker should create a lot of chances by also satisfying themselves.
Yeah.
But in K-League, many strikers is kind of opportunist.
Yeah, they are there until they get the ball. Because but the reality is, like you said, the number 9 has to be someone who initiate the whole pressing process, because he's right there. He's in front of any other player, so he has to how to initiate the pressing and how to orient the pressing. But still, maybe in youth category, those kind of concepts still they don't train that much, or they don't train. So maybe we need some more time, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. JP, I'm gonna ask you just a couple of last questions, or I'll just ask you the last question. This is the question that we always ask to end our show. As a football coach, I know you're kind of in a transitional period right now in terms of your work as a football coach. But what kind of coach do you want to be remembered as when it's all said and done?
Yeah, nice question. And one of my best players so far is Oh Hyung-gyu.
At Celtic.
Talent and his attitude is perfect. And when I first met him when he was 17 years old, still at the time also he had a good attitude. Also, he want to be a best, because when I watch Holland, Hyung-gyu is kind of character like Holland. Many people will say that Holland looks like a very selfish and very cocky, but it's in a good way.
Right.
Hyung-gyu was like that. He's still like that. So I really like Hyung-gyu now play in Europe, because in Korea sometimes suppress this type of player. Yeah, you are young, so stop like that in Korea. So I'm happy. But by the way, football coach, if meet this kind of player, don't teach them.
Don't teach them.
Football coach must guide them. Just a top down, no top down control.
Yeah.
Top down guidance. But when coach are prepared well, he can guide the player. But if the coach not prepared well, he just teach because he is in hurry. He shows some his ability right now because he's not confident in his heart.
Right.
Yeah. So I want to be a football coach who can guide the players.
What I found really interesting when I was speaking with Hyun-gyu, I think I interviewed him about 3 months ago or so, about 3 to 4 months ago. And what he told me that was really interesting was, because I asked him about adjusting to life in Scotland, because it must have been a big transition for him, because he moved to Scotland in the middle of the season, in the middle of the European season. And then, he was thrown into a situation. This is a team that was competing for a domestic treble in Scotland. I asked him how life was like for him, adjusting to life in Scotland, after you've lived all your life in Korea. Yeah. And what he said was, I actually like it better here, because my personality, people always said that I'm a strong character. People always said that I have a really strong attitude about myself. I mean, that could be a good thing or a bad thing, I guess, especially in Korea. But what he said was, but because I am that way, I actually think I'm a better fit here than maybe I was in Korea.
Yeah, because, Hyung-gyu was also player in Sangmu, military service team, At the time, I had a phone call with him. He was really depressed. He was depressed because because Sangmu team, you can imagine older, And always I said, Hyung-gyu, don't forget yourself. Sometimes I sent pictures of Holland. And also between Hyung-gyu and me, I call him like a Thanos. Because Hyung-gyu looks like a Thanos. He has a character like that.
Yeah.
So I really I'm really happy to see that Hyung-gyu is there.
Sure.
Increase his potential, And also his father was really nice because when Hyung-gyu was young, his father was really humble. He always tried to guide his son rather than you are the best, so you must go. His father was also in the right track. and always, very, how can I say, sometimes very, how can I say, like a tiger,
Mm-hmm.
But Hyungyu followed his order because his father was right. Also, Hyungyu want to improve himself.
Mm-hmm.
So was the relationship between the son and the father was also really good. Good model.
Yeah. No, he talked to me about his father too. You know how much of a motivation it was, because he told me that his dad was always like, you have to do more, you have to be able to do more, and also for you may be one of the better players in Korea, but for you to be a competent international player, you have to think faster, you have to play faster, you have to improve as a player. He was always pushing him to be better, and I thought that was really cool when we were having our conversation. So okay, Young-hoon, do you have any more questions for JP here, or can we wrap up?
We can wrap up. That's it.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. JP, thank you so much once again for taking your time. Very interesting conversation, because I feel like a lot of the topics that we've discussed and a lot of the little details that we mentioned during this podcast normally don't get talked about in English like this, because it was sort of like a blend between Korean and like like football in general. So I felt like this was a really fun conversation. So like, for those of you listening, I hope it was just as informative for you as it was for us. I almost feel like I do this podcast for my own benefit than people who are actually listening to this. Like I need to start listening to myself more and make it more of a, more of a public thing rather than my personal curiosity. But yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. That was our episode number 7 of CTH Podcast. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We will be back very soon with episode number 8. Thank you, JP. Thank you, Young-hoon. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.